Well, I went down to...
Welcome to She McVotes 100. We are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. We are also celebrating McHenry County women, past and present. We won the vote, we got out the vote, we ran for office, and we made change. And it's not over yet. Join McHenry County Democrats as we explore the passion, the power, and the commitment of McHenry County women.
Now he's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet. Ain't gonna let the system walk all over me.
Now for a little bit of history. Hey Illinois, be proud. On June 10, 1919, we were one of the first states to vote yes to the 19th Amendment. McHenry County newspapers, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, barely noticed. That might be because it was old news. In 1913, women in Illinois had already achieved the right to vote in township and municipal elections. And for that, much is owed to Marengo's very own Elizabeth Sisson Shurtleff, a progressive activist and wife of Edward Shurtleff, who happened to be the former Speaker and at the time a still very powerful member of the Illinois General Assembly. Let's back up. Things were coming to a head around the turn of the century into the 1910s. Women got organized, formed various voting and social reform clubs. They marched and rallied. Sound familiar? A number of Woodstock women even put together a women's band to perform at the head of women's rights marches. In this photo, taken at the Woodstock Opera House, they proudly stand as members of the Lady Suffragettes Minstrels. McHenry County even made the list of places visited by a leader of the suffrage movement in an effort to organize and mobilize women in Illinois. Grace Wilbur Trout, the new president of the Chicago Political Equality League and later the Illinois Equal Suffrage Association, is shown here as she takes her message on the road during her 10-day suffragette auto tour. Between July 11th and 15th, 1910, she traveled the bumpy roads in this open-air car and stopped in Woodstock and was drenched in a rainstorm in McHenry. But it wasn't all fun and music. The struggle for suffrage was a complicated political struggle, not solely about women voting. The fight for the women's vote went hand in hand with the progressive movement, which was working to pass a number of social reforms. McHenry County was home to a number of those reform groups, including an extremely active chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Illinois Anti-Saloon League, led by women of status in the county. Places like Woodstock, Ringwood, Harvard, and Marengo formed strong unions, and by 1911, this county was the banner temperance county in Illinois. Alcohol abuse was an issue for the women of the time. Besides the physical abuse that resulted from alcoholism, the families of the average working men suffered financially when paychecks were spent at the local saloon. The fear was that giving women the vote would lead to the elimination of the neighborhood tavern. In May of 1913, a suffrage bill was passed in the Senate that allowed women the vote in local elections. It went to the House. Powerful leaders, such as future Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, who was a backer of tavern interests, thought that Edward Shurtleff, despite being a progressive, would vote against the measure. Instead, with the insistence of Elizabeth, not only was he appointed a floor captain of the suffrage bill, he made an electrifying speech that convinced enough to bring 83 votes in support and pass the measure. It was passed on June 11, 1913. And on June 26, Governor Edward Dunn signed the suffrage bill that gave Illinois women the right to vote. Here we see that moment. Don signing the bill in the presence of his wife, standing to his left, and suffragette leaders Grace Wilbur Trout, Elizabeth Booth, female lawyer Antoinette Funk, and teachers union leader Margaret Haley, who was seated. Don't celebrate yet. It took another 7 years and 72 years from Seneca Falls for women in the U.S. to achieve the vote. And it wasn't even all women. African American women and Native American women didn't have the vote until many years after that. And we haven't given up on the fight for full equality and social reforms to this day. During this webcast, we'll bring you the stories of women who have made a difference in McHenry County, and women who will make a difference in McHenry County. But first, we'd like to bring you stories of some other first votes. The first time I voted was in the Chicago mayoral primary in 1979, after one of the most brutal winters in Chicago history. I was 19, in college, commuting from my home. I'm the eldest in my family. My parents are German immigrants. They were not citizens at the time, so I'm the first person in my family to vote in the United States. Living in Chicago, I was incredibly informed about politics. The winter of 78-79, and especially the blizzard of 79, became a political thing for then Mayor Michael Bolandic. I remember that winter very, very well, because I walked every weekday from my home in Albany Park to the Ravenswood end of the line at Kimball, changed trains at Fullerton to head north on the Howard-Englewood line, took my classes at Loyola. After class, I went back on the train and downtown to my job as receptionist. For young people out there, being a receptionist was a thing. Lots of kids had those jobs. It was way before Press 1 for business hours, Press 2. Anyway, the blizzard made commuting every day horrific. Not just for me, but for a lot of Chicagoans. Bolandic botched the snow cleanup, and in Chicago, that's a sin. So, in 78, in the Democratic primary where the real election sort of takes place, Jane Byrne ran on a progressive ticket, but mostly on Bolandic's ineffectiveness. Misogyny was a thing. A memo inside the Bolandic campaign said it should portray Byrne as, quote, a shrill, charging, vindictive person, and nothing makes a woman look worse, end of quote. Guess who I was fired up to vote for? So, on February 27th in 1979, I walked to my polling place, Hagen Elementary School, which was right at the end of my dead-end street. I was a little nervous because I had never voted before. The voting machines at the time were these monsters. I remember them getting set up at Hagen when I was a kid. The machines had all of these levers. So I'm walking up to the entrance of my school, and there was a line typical at the time of a bunch of political operatives standing around outside the electioneering zone. You know, what you would imagine Chicago political machine types looking like in 1979. They catcall me. Can you believe it? I am going in to do my civic duty and maybe voting for the person that they want to see win, probably Mayor Bolandic. And that's what they decide to do? So I went into my polling place, pretty determined and kind of angry, but not intimidated by a machine, not the Chicago machine and not a voting machine. I'm not sure if that's where my political career started. Maybe. Jane Byrne shook the machine that year, becoming the first woman mayor of the city of Chicago. I was pretty proud.
My first election that I was able to vote in was the presidential election in 1984. In that election, former Vice President Mondale was challenging then President Reagan for the presidency. And I was going to school at the University of Illinois, so I was about 3 hours away from home, and I had to vote via absentee ballot. I clearly remember sitting at my desk in my dorm room with my ballot in front of me and feeling the importance of being able to have a voice in that election and of being able to cast my very first vote for a president of the United States.
The very first time I ever voted was in the 2004 presidential race. I was attending Southern Illinois University at the time, and I utilized an absentee ballot to cast my very first vote for the Democrat, John Kerry. I felt super compelled at the time to vote for John Kerry because our country was at war, and the daily reports were heartbreaking. 2 or 3 American soldiers every day were losing their lives in that war, and that really affected me. Those soldiers were my age, and I couldn't help but think about their mothers' broken hearts and just all of that potential that was lost. And it outraged me. And I felt like voting for John Kerry was the only way that we were going to end that war. I didn't understand why we were there. I didn't understand why that had to be the case. I didn't see any purpose to it. And I felt like voting was the most important thing that I could do to voice my opposition to that war and to say that it wasn't okay and that our country needed to go in another direction.
So my first memory of voting was when I was 5 or 6 years old, going with my mom when she went to vote, and it was in a school building, and it was the voting booths with the fabric cloth that you pulled across like a shower, and that's what I thought it was, but there were levers and things that you pulled, and I was just fascinated by it. There were so many people there, and it was just fascinating to me as a child. So when I became a parent, and this is my daughter Mary, I brought her with me to vote. From the time that she was still in the car seat carrier, I carried her into the building, and every year, every election, every time I had the opportunity to vote, I took her with me, because I think it's so very important to exercise your right to vote, and I wanted to instill that in both of my kids, Mary and Peter. So they came with me every time, to the general election, to the primaries, to the school board elections, municipal elections. Every time we had the opportunity, we went to vote.
In the 1972 election between Nixon and Humphrey, that was my first opportunity to vote. And the question at that time was one of integrity. Of course, we know the outcome of that vote, and we know that just 2 years later, Richard M. Nixon resigned as President of the United States due to questions of integrity.
The first time I voted I'm proud to say, was for Jimmy Carter, and I'm thankful to both my parents who always voted. They felt it was their duty to vote, and they passed that on to their children.
My first time that I voted was in 1972. Back in the day, you had to be 21 years old all the way through 1971 when there was an amendment passed allowing us to vote at the age of 18. But that fell between the two elections. I voted for George McGovern. I had spent the last 4 to 5 years protesting the Vietnam War, and I was dead set against having Nixon reelected again. Didn't turn out well for me, but I felt good about voting. My mother, who is the daughter of 2 immigrants from Ireland, instilled the importance and the civil responsibility to go ahead and vote. It was a gift, and she made sure that we understood the importance of what we needed to do.
I began my teaching career on the west side of Chicago at Samuel Morse Elementary School. I taught a small class of special needs student. These days, we would have called a school like that at risk. And in those days, it was one of those tough schools. The kids had free lunch every day, and yet every morning they walked in hungry. So if I was expecting to get some work out of them in the morning, I was going to have to feed them, which I did. I made egg salad with crackers and peanut butter with crackers and cheese with crackers. And sometimes once somebody gave us a whole case full of oranges, which was such a treat. But the reality is things were going on in Washington. I heard rumblings about funding the free lunch program. Come to find out, the Democrats wanted to increase the amount. The Republicans wanted to delete it or take it down. And then the president came out. And President Ronald Reagan told us all, the kids use a lot of ketchup, and ketchup is a vegetable, so therefore no increase in free lunch finance. So there we go, and that's when I woke up. I'd already voted once, but I woke up and I realized how powerful that vote is.
I'm Cassandra Vos-Demon, and this is my song, We Are, that I wrote to honor women and hopefully inspire them. We stand together strong. We rise and walk on. We sing out our songs. We rise and walk on. We are the women of the ages. We are the keepers of the flame. We are the hands that tend the sick. We are the ones who know their names. We are the voice that softens anger. We are the holders of the pain. We are the beauty that surrounds us. We are the strength that will remain. We are the warriors of truth. We do not cower back in fear. We step forward into darkness. We sing songs for all to hear. We are the mothers and the daughters. We are the sisters and the friends. We are the grandmothers and teachers. We are the ones who hold the hands. And we stand together strong. We rise and walk on. We sing out our songs. And we rise and walk on. We will honor those before us as we fight for things to come. We will never be the silent ones. We will love until we're gone. We are the instruments of peace. We are a light to those in need. We are the ones who dare to dream. We are the souls yet to be freed. We take the chance despite resistance. Stay the course when others run. We won't cease until we liberate. We will persist till hate moves on. Take a stand when others turn away. Keep on believing there's still hope. We have been the ones who paved the way, and we'll march until our dying day. And we'll stand together strong. We rise and walk on. We sing out our songs. And we rise and walk on. are the warriors of truth. We do not cower back in fear. We step forward into darkness. We sing songs for all to hear. We are the mothers and the daughters. We are the sisters and the friends. We are the grandmothers and teachers. We are the ones who hold the hands. We take the chance despite resistance. Stay the course when others run. We won't cease until we liberate. We will persist till hate moves on. Take a stand when others turn away. Keep on believing there's still hope. We have been the ones who paved the way, and we'll march until our dying day. And we'll stand together strong. We rise and walk on. We sing out our songs. We rise and walk on. We stand together strong. We rise and walk on. We sing out our song. And we rise and we rise and we rise. We stand together strong. And we rise. We sing out our songs, and we rise, we rise.
Thank you, Cassandra. When Cassandra Rose Demon performed We Are for the first time at the Women's March here in Woodstock last January, we were blown away. What a gift to the movement! She has recorded We Are as a new single, and it is available to download from her website, A Place to Shine Music. Speaking of gifts, here's a sneak peek at some of the items you could win in the prize baskets we will be giving away at the end of the webcast. You must be present to enter, so see you later.
Hello, I'm Georgette Steinberg here at my home in McHenry County, Illinois. This year we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote and gave us a voice in our government. In a moment, we will talk to local women and hear their stories about voting and political action. But first, let's look back and remind ourselves that voting wasn't always an option for women. Before 1920, women fought hard through peaceful protests, civil disobedience, and lots of community organizing. They worked hard and didn't give up until the 19th Amendment was ratified. We will now hear from women who live and vote in McHenry County. We're talking with Cynthia Canner. Do you vote regularly and why?
Yeah, I do. I have voted in every election, and I've been an election judge, so I just did that recently in the past several years. I've done it at least once. I may have done it twice, and now I'm forgetting. I am not an election judge this coming election because of COVID, and I have a son with type 1 diabetes, and I'm just sitting this one out, but hopefully people will step up and volunteer. It's an amazing experience. It's a really interesting experience.
Why do you think women should vote?
We're individuals and humans. We're part of the human species. Anybody who's human, no matter your gender, your color, your ethnicity, where you live, should vote. And one of the problems is where to vote. And so, you know, when people don't have access to a convenient polling place, which can be purposeful, is a huge problem.
Is there anything else that you would like to add, maybe that I haven't asked you about? Or
I mean, I think hitting on, the young people voting is so important, and just making sure that people educate themselves about, who's running, and what their platform is, and supporting people who share your values is really important. And I think access. I think everyone has a part in making sure that our elections are easily participated in, that people have the opportunity to do that. There's a lot to advocate for still. So young people who are going to be aging up and running things, running the country, running local government, should have things in mind about what kind of changes do we need, like a national holiday for voting, maybe no more electoral college, one person, one vote. Let's, look at that. I mean, there are a lot of different things that can make our voting experience probably more meaningful. Gerrymandering is a big issue. So I think if you stopped any 18-year-old on the road, they wouldn't really know what that means. So education about these things that have pushed our voting system along, young people need to understand what that means.
we're talking with Kiara Connor. Hello.
Hi.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So I'm 18. I just graduated from Richmond Burton High School. I plan on attending DePaul University in Chicago this fall, and I'm a photographer.
Have you involved yourself in politics, and if so, how?
Yeah, I've always been very active in my community about, advocating for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights, all those sorts of things. But recently, my friends and I, we organized a protest within our community, which was one of the first protests I think our community's really ever held. And that was really powerful to us to see our community come together and, support each other. And probably a moment that I'll never forget, because growing up in a community where it's majority right-wing, seeing people come together to support the LGBTQ community and people of color was just so powerful to me, and it was a really great experience.
What do you say to young women, as yourself, that aren't voting?
I think that if you aren't voting, you have to ask yourself why. A lot of kids my age feel like it's not something that they need to be involved in or something that's for them to be involved in. Adults tend to take control of the conversation when it comes to politics a lot of the times, and kind of make us feel like we're not educated enough, we're not old enough, we're not smart enough. But the youth is so powerful, and I think that it's so important that we make our voices heard at the polls. So if you aren't voting, I really hope that you look into, why you aren't voting and educate yourself and hopefully make a change.
Can you talk a little bit more about the rewards of actively participating in politics?
Yeah. So to me, being able to be active in our community makes me feel like I have a little bit of control over what happens around me and what happens to those around me. And I want other people to feel safe within our community, regardless of their religious beliefs, their sexual orientation, the color of their skin. I feel like everyone should be able to feel safe in our community, and knowing that you have an opportunity to make people feel safe by being active in our community is something that's really gratifying.
We're talking with Valerie Carbajal. Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a Mexican immigrant. I've been living in the United States for 35 years. So I'm a licensed clinical therapist, and I immigrated to this country with knowing no English. So I went to school here and raised a family at the same time, worked full time, and finally, in 2004, I became a USA citizen.
Were politics and social issues talked about around the table, dinner table, or at home?
My parents, were farmers, and I remember hearing about politics. Kind of my father became a village mayor. So they would bring, candidates. They had to make food. It was just a big deal. But that's, for the village, bringing those candidates. To kind of campaigning.
How old were you when you first voted?
I was 39. It was right 1 year after I became a USA citizen.
Why did you vote?
You know, being an immigrant, you go through so many hurdles to become a USA citizen. When I came to this country, I was undocumented. It took us so many years for me and my husband to become legal. So one of the first things that I recall say, okay, now it's my right to vote. I can make a change. Changes. Instead, I used to hear one vote counts. Yeah. So, but then I became interested. It said, if we're going to be part of this society, let's work on something. Let's make it work. Let's be part of it.
Have you participated in politics yourself?
I was a community activist, and we lobbied. We went and knocked at doors. For getting Latinos out to vote. We did that for maybe 2 months before elections, for when Obama was a candidate.
We're talking with Dolores Manny. Hi, Dolores.
Hi.
Have you participated in politics in our area yourself, or maybe some social issues in our area yourself?
Well, in a couple of ways. Of course, the choice issue is a big one with me, and I got involved with that in the late 80s. After Ronald Reagan and after H.W. Bush, I worked with some other women who were very involved and had started a group out here called McHenry County Citizens for Choice. That was a big one, and I worked with them and became president of the group. That, of course, got me involved somewhat politically, and this whole thing that's happening now is very disturbing in that people don't seem to remember that in a democracy we all work together, and that some of us have one idea and some of us have another. But the idea of democracy is to put those ideas together and come up with the best solution for different problems, and not to fight and expect you're going to get your way all the time. So I don't know. It's education is going to be our salvation, I think. We have to continue trying to reach younger people with the whole attitude of how we live together in this country.
What are some of the rewards that you felt personally?
You know, the biggest reward I get is when I hear women talk and they know the issues and they know how they feel about the issues, because our biggest the biggest thing that we want to do as far as MCCC is concerned is to educate.
Is there anything else that we haven't discussed?
I can't say enough about how we need to get everyone out to vote on this election. have such fear for our democracy. My issue goes pretty deep into the woods on this because I am really, really concerned. We went along thinking, oh, isn't this wonderful? We've got this wonderful country and everything works. Well, all we had to do was find someone who threw a wrench in a few things, and we find out there are some really serious problems that we need to probably make some laws rather than just accept the fact that this was always done this way and so it'll continue being done. We have been fortunate that nothing has happened before this time. But now we've got the wake-up call, and we really need to get that message out.
We're talking with Judy Vandenboom.
Yes, you are. After I was elected as secretary, I was secretary for the party for a year. And I served on in a campaign office for a woman, Catherine Lee, who ran for Congress at one time. And after that, I served as campaign office manager for 2 different candidates, a Republican and a Democrat, for 3 different times because the Democrat ran twice. And the Republican won, but she was pro-choice. So I was happy to work for her and get her down in Springfield. That was to be first state rep. I've marched in parades with the Democratic Party. And over the years, I've had many political letters to the editor, printed in the Northwest Herald. And I served 1 year as a precinct committee person. President Eisenhower was up for re-election. Mom and I were very excited about that because he was coming to Chicago for a ticker tape parade. So I spent several hours on a Sunday cutting up the Sunday funnies so that she and I would have, you know, now the word escapes me, confetti to throw as he passed, which we did. And for that election, I would be 21, old enough to vote because it wasn't 18, was not in the story yet, just 6 days before the election. That was my first vote. And I have never missed a vote, an election, since then. Even when it's my patriotic duty.
Do you feel there are rewards in taking political action?
Well, the feeling of exhilaration when your candidate wins. I'm very happy to see a lot of women in politics now.
We're talking with Beth Marshall. How old were you when you voted for the first time?
I was 18 the first time I voted. And my dad drove me to the polling place on the way to school because he felt it was something important that I needed to do.
Why did you vote?
I voted because it was ingrained in me that it was part of our responsibility. In order to have a functioning government and a democracy, you needed to have your voice heard. And so voting was just something that was expected. I was expected to participate in, and so I never really even questioned it.
How have you participated in politics yourself?
I think in our family it's just been important to donate to certain political campaigns. Definitely with my husband as a science teacher, environmental groups are very important to us. My oldest son has Down syndrome, so we make sure that our money goes to different groups there as well. We've had campaign signs outside our homes. There have been times for school referendums where we've maybe done some phone calls. But attending any real protests, I think part of that is just because there hasn't really, in Richmond, there haven't been that many opportunities.
What social issues matter most to you?
I think the social issues that matter most would be public education, social services, equality for all. I think it's important for everyone to have a voice and for everyone to have the same opportunities. Within our own home, Both my husband and I, like I've said before, we're educators. My middle son is studying to be a science teacher, and even my youngest son is studying to be a social worker. So I think we value social programs and making sure that people have the help that they need to be successful.
Why do you think women should vote?
I think that women need to vote because for too long our voices haven't been heard, and it's now time to make sure that you take responsibility for the world. If you don't like the way that something is happening, then it's your obligation to participate in our democracy and have your voice heard and cast the vote and show the support for whatever you feel strongly about. I think that it's important to not get discouraged. We kind of talk about Illinois is known as as more of a Democratic state, as a Republican state, but I know that we live in a very conservative county. And I think it's just really important to educate yourself, not just believe everything that you see and hear on the news, that you do some research, and kind of, look at the world besides what the world is for you, because not everyone has it as easy, or everyone's life experience is different. But we should be in a country where some things should just be guaranteed rights, and there should be more equity.
Now that we have the privilege to vote, it is up to us to act. Let's get out there on voting day to vote, or vote early at our designated polling places. Encourage your friends and family to vote. You can mail your ballot in, just make sure you do it as early as possible. If you need to register in Illinois, you can register and vote the same day by bringing 2 forms of ID with your name and present address on it when you go to the polling place to vote. Women be heard. Get out and vote. Thank you.
Breathing the story of my life. Can you see them? Every single broken piece. I don't need any hugs to be fine. I find my strength inside me. Do you think you can do the same? Now things are changing, you're tired of pretending. I wanna hear you say, hey, everything is okay, I will be strong enough. I wanna hear you say, hey, I decide for my life, 'cause I am strong enough. Say you are strong enough. How many streets have I gone down? Roads of patience and hardship. I know you've already done the same. Strive to follow every single stupid move. But now things are changing, you're tired of pretending. I wanna hear you say, hey, everything is okay, I will be strong enough. I wanna hear you say, hey, I decide for my life, 'cause I am strong enough. Say you are strong enough. say leave me alone. I don't believe you are not enough. You are, you are. I wanna hear you say, I wanna hear you say, I will be strong enough. I wanna hear you say, hey, everything is okay. I will be strong enough. I wanna hear you say, hey, I decide for my life, 'cause I am strong enough. Say you are strong enough. I wanna hear you say, everything is okay. I will be strong enough. I wanna hear you say, I wanna hear you say, hey, I am strong enough. Say you are strong Say you are strong enough.
We've accomplished many, many things, but as they say, a woman's work is never done. Next, a few words from the model of McHenry County female passion, power, and commitment. She's the precinct committee person for None to 25, a trustee of the Village of Oakwood Hills, chair of the Democratic Party of McHenry County, Illinois Democratic State Central Committee woman for the 14th Congressional District, and chair of the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association, the woman with 1,000 hats, the most honorable Christina Zahorik.
Hi, thanks, Ruth, and thank you to all the other folks who worked to put this together. We know how we got the vote. We know how important that vote is. We know the tremendous effort invested to get out the vote. Every vote counts, every election. Some elections come down to a vote of precinct. Just ask Democratic Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerichs, or even just a single vote. Every vote counts, every vote matters, every election. Do you need information on voting? Easy. Just go to mchenrydems.org/vote. You can find out all about the easy ways here in Illinois that Democrats have made it to vote. Early voting, early satellite voting, vote by mail, and of course on Election Day. Just pick which way you want to vote and make a plan. Again, visit mchenrydems.org/vote. But we can't vote if there isn't a candidate to vote for. And that's the other part of this equation. Who are we voting for? Who's the candidate? These past 4 years have shown us painfully and clearly that elections have consequences, and not just at the federal or presidential level. Think about the devastation that the former Republican governor had on the economy of our state by refusing to do his job and submit a budget for over 2 years. Or think about the amazing things that Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker has done so far in his short term. His leadership during this pandemic has saved lives. We need everyday people who share our democratic values to run for office, for every office, school board, library board, township, municipal office, county board, and so on. Every election matters. Every vote matters and counts. And I wanted to introduce you to some of those Democrats who stepped up this year to run for office. We recruited and had an unprecedented number of women run for this particularly historic year. Find out about all of our candidates at mchenrydems.org/candidates. But first, let's hear from some of our outstanding women candidates and their allies.
So in my career as a nurse, I've worked to expand healthcare coverage in communities across our country by working to implement the Affordable Care Act. I served in the Obama administration working on public health emergencies and disasters, and then returned home to Illinois to work for a Medicaid managed care plan in Chicago. I attended Randy Holtgren's one and only public event of 2017, that town hall in St. Charles, where he promised to only vote for a version of Obamacare repeal that let people with pre-existing conditions keep their healthcare coverage. As a nurse, a person with a pre-existing condition, and someone, who worked on the ACA, I believed his promise. And so when he broke his word 2 weeks later and voted for the American Health Care Act, I was really upset and decided, you know what, it's on, I'm running.
I decided to run after I learned in my county all of the judges who are supposed to be voted in got an early advance appointment through a secretive and political process. I thought that was wrong, unethical, and instead of just hoping for a better day or for things to change, I decided to use my voice to run for that same office and earn it fair and square. You can do the same thing. Your vote is your voice. Make it heard.
I decided to run for office when I learned that no one was going to be challenging an incumbent who had not represented my values or the values of people that I know and love in the 65th District. As a mom, a teacher, and someone with experience working in women's health and mental health, I believe that people should always come first, and that to be ready for the future, we need to invest properly in education, the environment, and people's well-being. I want to see everyone have a chance to thrive, and I'm willing to do the hard work to make sure that happens.
Back in 2016, when Donald Trump won the presidential election, it was a gloomy day in our household. And so when the Women's March started forming, my 2 young adult daughters asked my husband and I if we were all going to Washington, D.C. for the Women's March. And so we said yes. And in January, 2 carloads from our household made the trip to the nation's capital and stood among more than 500,000 people to be inspired, to get together, and to support all of us through what we knew was going to be a difficult 4 years. But while I was standing there in DC, among all those people, Michael Moore stood on that stage and he said, "Women, if you're waiting for somebody else to run, if not you, then who?" And the moment I heard that call, it was like a feeling in my gut. I started to think yeah, he's right. And so I decided to run for the McHenry County Board, and I won my seat in 2018. And it was through that experience where I really decided that it was time to be engaged and time to get out and talk to voters, which I have done to thousands of people throughout the district in this last 2 years, between that race and now my state representative race. That's been my favorite part of this entire process. So
when I was told that they were looking for somebody specifically for that office, and she asked me, would you be interested in running? My first thought was, well, of course, because we know that people with our beliefs and views out in Lake County and McHenry County aren't represented, and we don't have a voice, and it's about time that we do.
The reason I decided to run for office here in McHenry County was that I did not see enough leadership with vision for where the McHenry County needed to go in the future. I felt that the leadership that's currently there is more concerned about reacting to things that come up rather than to try and lead the county into the direction of the future. That is why I'm running.
I'm running because I care about the environment like many of us do. It is so beautiful where we live, and we have a chance to continue the legacy of our many awesome environmental groups that have been around, some of them for 50 years. We want to continue that legacy and protect our environment. We also want to speak for all of us on the county board, not just have one segment of the population represented, but all of us show the many facets that make up McHenry County.
I decided to run for office because I'd finally had enough. I was tired of the way people were being treated from that office, and since it was in an area of my expertise, I decided that I could do a better job, and I decided to run. So instead of sitting on the sidelines and complaining about it, I decided to step up.
My first experience with the circuit courts began on August 1st, 1994, when I accepted the position in the circuit clerk's office. When I embarked upon my journey, I had no idea how much the law, courts, and working as a public servant would change my life. What began as a job turned into an amazing career. I'm running for McHenry County Circuit Clerk. I will become the first Democrat that has ever held this elected position. History shows that the current circuit clerk chooses and grooms the next successor. The Republicans have always controlled this office, and it's time for a change, as it is my belief that this office should remain unbiased at all times.
It's been more than a decade since there has been a Democratic challenger in my district. If there's only one person running for office, you don't have an election. You have a glorified political appointment. Without a clear choice between opposing views, nothing changes. Without a contested election, those in power feel they have a license to disregard the people they are supposed to represent. The right to vote came at a high price, too high to let any office go to the ruling party by default. Your vote can't matter if there is only one candidate, and each person's vote matters now more than it ever has. So it prompted me to enter this race this year. After all, it wasn't like this was the first time there wasn't a Democrat on the ballot. The values the Republican candidate were so opposite of mine on every single issue, from gender equality to religious tolerance, that I was shocked. And without a challenger, he was going to be my representative, my voice in Springfield. By running for office, I hope to be able to give a voice to those who haven't had representation in my district for a long time.
I first learned about the judicial system the night the babysitter moved in. Her father had tried to kill her. The police were called. They called my parents. My parents went to her aid and brought her home to come live with us, to keep her safe. She had bruising on her throat. It was the first time I learned what domestic violence was, and it was my first exposure to the court system. I was 9 years old. It started off my quest to seek justice, to work within the community, and to help others. I decided to run for office because I felt like I had seen too many incidences where wealth and power were winning out over the victims that had set me on the course to go to law school, to work towards justice. And so I decided that I needed to take that next step and run for judge.
So I was asked to tell my story about why I ran for office. And I hold two offices. One is a partisan office, and the other is an elected office within my village as a trustee. And they're kind of intertwined a little bit. And I think I ran for office because of anger and a sense of duty. And I think that's why a lot of women run for office, is a sense of anger, whether it's injustice or lack of response or whatever the case may be. I think that's in large part why women are compelled to run, and I certainly was no different.
I'll tell you the story about how I decided to run for office. I am in this job because of two women, Ann Wick and Katie McGinty. We had September 2016, we'd sold our company. I was essentially on a retainer agreement with the folks we'd sold to make sure that we got all the transition done, which is a sweet job if you ever get one. You don't have to work very hard and you still get paid. But we were going through the transition, and a request came in to the company that I'd built to the new owners, saying that there were some tax policy issues that were coming up in Washington that would really help supporting clean energy tax credits that would be helpful if we would go. And there was a group going that was organized by the Pew Charitable Trusts. They'd asked if someone from our company would go, and the new owners were still getting settled in, and they said, can we ask you to go and represent the company there? I said, I'd be happy to. And we went and we met a gentleman who I'd never met before, my representative, Peter Roscom, and basically made the case for why clean energy tax credits were a good thing to do, would help grow the economy, would help businesses in his district. Long story short, after I'd made the case, he stood up, looked at his watch, said, we're out of time, and left the room. And I got home and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but that's not what representation is supposed to look like. A couple nights later, we were out to dinner with good family friends of ours, Ann Wick and her husband Eric and my wife Kara. And I told the story, and Ann had this sort of shocked look on her face and said, I knew he walked out on minorities and women. I didn't know he walked out on white guys who were CEOs. You should come to meet this group that I'm with. And she introduced me to Reed McCollum and Patrick Watson and all the people who became part of CBIL 6. Then, long story short, that was what set this train running. The second thing that happened was I hadn't made the decision yet, but was meeting with my friend Katie McGinty, who had just lost a race for Senate in Pennsylvania. We were trying to figure out what to do next, and she said, I told her the story, and she said, there's the potential to flip the House this cycle, and I think you'd really like this job, because if you know what you want to accomplish in this life and you're intellectually curious, there's no better job than being a member of Congress. And if both those things aren't true, there's no worse, and it sounds like your opponent probably fits into that latter category. So thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, the McHenry Dems. Keep on fighting for democracy. Be safe, everybody.
Welcome back. These are amazing candidates, and they're running not because of who they want to be, but because of what they want to do. These Democratic candidates believe in America. They believe in good government, and they're running because they want to better the lives of all of us and to find solutions to the problems we face. I know you'll do your part and help get them elected, not just by voting yourself, but by getting others within your circle to vote too. When women vote, we win. Your vote is critical, and your effort to support Democratic candidates is vital. They need your donations, and they need your time to win. We're all working to get out the vote, so go to mchenrydems.org to sign up to join us and volunteer, either with a candidate or for the local Democratic Party here in McHenry County. Are you interested in making even more of a difference? Well, we are looking for candidates for for the municipal elections in the spring. For the school board, the library board, park board, township trustee, council member, maybe even mayor. All of these are great places to serve in your community. Your name on the ballot is needed if we're going to continue to make the progress on the issues that we all care about. So email me at info@mchenrydems.org. We'll get you set up and we'll get you elected. It's time to rise up. And now the moment that you've all been waiting for, our drawing. So back with the details is our events chair, Cindy Pills.
Here's a preview of some of the fabulous things that are contained in the baskets before I give you the number to text. We've got some really valuable action figures of AOC and RBG, a very cool tea towel with an MLK quote at the bottom of it, books, really nice puzzle, perfect for winter time coming up, and a sash. A little kit bag. Okay, are you ready with your pen? I'm going to show you the phone number and the message. Text Votes for Women to 312-315-1077. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Cindy. So good luck, everybody, and thank you for joining us. So don't forget to vote. Don't forget to tell your friends to vote. And again, sit back and listen to Cassandra Vosterman singing Rise Up.
This is Rise Up by Andra Day. You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, and we're gonna walk it out and move mountains. We're gonna walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. We'll take it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, rise like the wave. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. Well, all we need is hope. And for that we have each other. And for that we have each other. We will rise, we will rise. Oh, we will rise, and we'll rise up. Rise like the day, we'll rise up. In spite of the air, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again and again. And we'll rise up, rise like the waves, and we'll rise.